When I first met Penny, it was during a summer volunteer program at a local hospital. She was a student nurse then, and her dedication caught my attention long before her smile did. I was a budding architect working on a side project for the hospital's expansion, and fate had us crossing paths in the break room one afternoon. She laughed at my clumsy attempt to reach the top shelf for a mug and offered to help, instantly disarming me with her warmth. Our early days together were a whirlwind of late-night phone calls and shared dreams. She wanted to make a difference in pediatric care, and I dreamed of designing homes that brought joy to families. We supported each other through those years of hard work and limited resources, often sharing meals of instant noodles and making do with thrift store finds for furniture. Despite the struggles, we were happy just being together. Our first major hurdle came when Penny's father fell seriously ill. Balancing her studies and part-time work with caring for him put immense strain on her, and I did what I could to lighten the load. It was during this period that I saw her resilience and compassion in full force, qualities that deepened my love for her. We became each other's pillars of strength, and those challenging months solidified our bond. Marriage followed not long after graduation, and we found joy in building a life together, even as the responsibilities piled up. Our first child arrived 3 years later, and I can still recall how Penny's face lit up when she held him for the first time. Over the years, she juggled her nursing career and motherhood with a grace I admired, even if it often left her drained. By the time our youngest was born, the cracks in our seemingly perfect life began to show. Penny put her dreams of advancing her career on hold, prioritizing our children's needs and the financial challenges we faced. I focused on work to keep us afloat, and though we remained close, the stresses of daily life often left little room for the romance and connection we once shared. Now, with the children grown and gone, I'd envisioned a new chapter, a chance to rekindle what we'd lost amid the chaos. I wanted us to reclaim the passion and partnership that had once defined our relationship. Little did I know that the journey ahead would test us in ways I could never have foreseen. Penny and I have been together for almost 3 decades, and this past year marked a significant turning point for us. Our youngest left for college, officially transitioning us into the phase of being empty nesters. I saw it as an opportunity to deepen our connection and nurture the parts of our relationship that had taken a back seat during our years of raising children. Our home, though small, didn't offer much in the way of privacy, but I had a plan to reignite the romance. After we dropped off our daughter, I swept Penny into my arms and carried her upstairs, laughing off her light-hearted objections about needing a shower after the drive. The evening was passionate, and her enthusiasm sparked a sense of optimism in me about this new chapter of our lives. At 48, Penny's charm hadn't faded, and my love for her remained steadfast. Penny has been a nurse since we met, though life, 3 kids, financial stress, and endless responsibilities kept her from advancing in her career. Frustration about being stuck in the same role while younger nurses climbed the ranks often left her visibly upset. After what I thought was a great night, Penny surprised me with a bold announcement. She had been planning to join a 6-month pediatric nursing training program. "The hospital needs pediatric nurses," she explained. "After training, I could specialize, and in a few years I might even lead the department or become matron. It'll help us save more for retirement by 60. I was stunned, both by her determination and the fact that she had planned this without telling me. "Why didn't you share this earlier?" I asked, feeling blindsided. Her response floored me further. "The program is out of state. An hour by car, 3 by flight. I'll be gone for 6 months. 6 months? I repeated, shocked. That's a long time. Isn't there another option? No, this is the only one. It's not that long in the big picture, Mike, she said, adding that couples endure far longer separations. I can fly home monthly, or you can visit me. I struggled to process it all. As I voiced my concerns, Penny cut me off. Don't be selfish, Mike. Selfish? I've always supported you and the kids, I replied, hurt. Her anger didn't waver. If this were your dream, I'd be expected to cheer you on. But because it's mine, it's selfish. I never said that, I countered. I just need time to process. You've had months, I've had minutes. Her tone softened as she explained that housing would be covered, and while frequent visits might not be practical, I could come once a month. Her passion was inspiring, but the suddenness left me reeling. Her reasoning seemed logical, but the gap between my hopes for this new phase of our lives and her plan left me reeling. I felt off balance, and that vulnerability left me open to persuasion. Penny leaned in, kissing my neck and seducing me into a second round of closeness. Let's face it, any man in my shoes would have been hard-pressed to resist. In the heat of the moment, I agreed to her plan. Then she dropped the final surprise. "The course starts next week," she said casually as she packed her bags. I stared at her, stunned. "Next week?" "You already agreed," she reminded me, leaving no room for debate. And just like that, she was gone, her excitement bubbling over as though she were a kid heading off to summer camp. She was so thrilled, she almost forgot to kiss me goodbye. Watching her leave, I couldn't help but feel like I'd been swept aside, my questions and concerns drowned in her whirlwind of enthusiasm. I have to admit, adjusting to a new daily routine wasn't easy for me. For years, I never gave much thought to how I'd spend my free time. Penny had always been the one who managed our social calendar. As long as she included me in the plans, I was content to let her take charge of that part of our lives. I know I'm not alone in this. Most of the guys I work with would say the same about their wives. Penny's evenings and weekends were often packed with activities she planned for the two of us, aside from the family responsibilities. Meanwhile, I handled the essential chores, mowing the lawn, washing the cars, and driving the kids to sports practices and games. But now, with her gone, my evenings stretched into long hours of loneliness and boredom. It wasn't that we'd been particularly adventurous or social before, but even the simple routines we had shared, like laughing at TV shows or talking about the news, were missing. I even found myself missing her habit of rubbing her feet while we relaxed together. During the first week of Penny's absence, we talked on the phone for about half an hour each evening. I couldn't help but wonder if she had factored in the rising phone bill when she budgeted for this new phase of her life. More than that, I found myself feeling envious. She was obviously thriving in her new environment, excited and fully immersed in the challenges she was facing. Our conversations revolved around her updates. Her enthusiasm was undeniable, and she often spoke of new people whose names meant nothing to me. It left me feeling excluded, as though I no longer had a place in this chapter of her life. Still, the calls ended warmly, leaving me hopeful that this temporary separation might deepen our connection when she returned. By the second week, our nightly chats had shrunk to about 20 minutes. Penny explained, "Mike, I need to stay focused. These calls pull me out of my studying mindset." Her words stung. I felt like I had been relegated to the role of an interruption. I tried to keep the conversations positive and loving, but by the end of the week, they started to feel one-sided. Despite my frustrations, I stayed supportive, keeping my loneliness to myself. By the third week, Penny suggested we talk every other evening instead of daily. "I'll call you, Mike," she said. "That way I can make sure it's a good time." Her calls became less frequent, and by the fourth week, they dwindled to just 2. She had her first major assignment and was working evening shifts, and I tried to be understanding. Still, it was hard. I missed her. I missed us. I'd planned to visit her that weekend, but fate had other ideas. Penny called to cancel my trip. "There's a flu outbreak, Mike. The hospital's overwhelmed and it wouldn't be safe. Besides, I won't have any time to spend with you." Disappointed, I resolved to make the best of the weekend. While stopping for gas, I ran into an old friend I hadn't seen in years. He invited me to join his poker group, which met every Saturday night at the local pub. Feeling tired of my routine and missing Penny's presence, I decided to go. The evening was enjoyable. We played cards in a back room before heading to the bar for drinks. After years of family-friendly outings, neighborhood cookouts, and kid-oriented activities, the pub was a revelation. I was surprised by the number of single women around my age, or slightly younger, who approached me with bold confidence. Some were unmistakably trying to pick me up. It was startling how, after so many years of marriage, I had forgotten that these encounters still happened in bars. It took me a few weeks to notice a pattern. On nights when Penny didn't call, I found myself at the pub. At first, I chalked it up to coincidence, but as the visits became more frequent, it was hard to ignore. One evening, I turned to my friend Jeff and asked, "What's going on here?" Jeff laughed. "Mike, are you really that clueless? Haven't you noticed? At our age, there are way more single women than single men. This place is full of widows, divorcees, and women whose husbands traded them in for younger models." "But why are they approaching me?" I asked, genuinely puzzled. Jeff smirked. "Look at yourself. You're fit, thanks to your job. You've still got your looks, and you're not weighed down by kids or an angry wife. If you took off that wedding ring, half the women here would be lining up to take you home tonight. No fancy lines, no drinks required." I glanced around, and noticed the attention I had been oblivious to before. Jeff followed my gaze and continued. Don't get me wrong. I know you love Penny, but let's say you were single. Women here are on the hunt, and you'd have no trouble finding someone. Just don't be too eager. Most of them are here for a quick fling or to boost their confidence. Jeff pointed to a table where a woman sat surrounded by friends. See her? She's probably just been dumped. Her friends are here to cheer her up. Give it a few weeks and she'll be looking for someone to help her feel desirable. Or to get even. He gestured toward another group of women laughing together at a different table. Now those ladies, they're here to have fun. Some are married, some aren't, but at least one of them would take a chance on a guy like you. They're not desperate, but they're open to opportunities. As I listened to Jeff, I couldn't help but feel uneasy. I wasn't looking to replace Penny, but the growing distance between us and the attention I was receiving left me wondering what this chapter of our lives would bring. As I sat nursing my drink, my phone buzzed with a text from Penny. She apologized, explaining she was too busy at work to call, and signed off with a quick, "Love you." I wanted to feel comforted, but the truth was her messages and calls had been growing more infrequent with each passing week. At least this one ended with, "Love you," which was more than her last few abrupt updates. I sent a short reply. "Love you too," then slipped my phone back into my pocket and turned to Jeff. "All right, Jeff," I said. "Let's test your theory. Prove your point." Jeff grinned. "Take off your wedding ring and head over to the bar near that table. Order yourself a drink and see what happens." Reluctantly, I removed the ring and slid it into my pocket. Following his suggestion, I moved to the bar and leaned casually against the counter, keeping the table in my peripheral vision as I waited for the bartender. It didn't take long. Within moments, one of the married women at the table discreetly slipped off her own wedding ring and walked over to me. She confidently offered to buy me a drink, but her interest evaporated the moment I mentioned that I was married. When I casually added that I'd noticed her removing her ring, her face flushed red, and she quickly retreated. Not long after, another woman from the same group approached. She placed an order for drinks, even though her table's glasses were still nearly full, and struck up a conversation. It was clear she wasn't really there for a round of drinks. I wasn't interested. And my distant body language must have given that away because she soon returned to her friends. I was finishing my drink and waiting for Jeff to return from the restroom when I heard a quiet "hi" behind me. Turning, I saw another woman from the table, the second unmarried one, standing there. Her approach was calm and composed, with none of the nervous energy I'd seen earlier. She exuded confidence, and her smile felt genuine, not calculated. If I'd been single, I might have found her intriguing. She was attractive, her honey blonde curls framing a face that looked both approachable and self-assured. Her figure was lean but healthy, and there was no wedding ring, or even a tan line to suggest one had been there. Out of habit, I glanced down at my own hand, where the absence of my ring left no telltale mark either. Tradition suggested I offer her a drink, but before I could, she raised her glass with a small smile. "No need," she said, her voice carrying an easy confidence that made her instantly likable. We started talking casually, the kind of light banter that doesn't feel forced. About 10 minutes in, I decided to come clean. "I should probably tell you, I'm married," I said, even though I wasn't wearing my ring. I could have lied or made an excuse, but something about her made me feel like honesty was the only choice. She raised an eyebrow but didn't look angry. "Then why come here without a ring? That feels misleading." I shook my head. "It's not what it looks like. My friend Jeff has this theory about women our age in bars, and he dared me to test it out. For what it's worth, one of your friends came up to me earlier and wasn't exactly shy about taking off her rings." She laughed, a warm, genuine sound. "That must have been Carol. She's not really my friend. I only met her tonight. She came with Sue, who I actually know. Honestly, when I saw her do that, I thought the same thing. Her poor husband." I nodded, relieved she wasn't offended. "For the record, I'm not here to cheat on my wife. I just needed a change of scenery. My wife's been away for a while, and it's been challenging." Her curiosity seemed piqued, so I explained further. "Penny's doing a 6-month training program out of state. It's been almost 2 months now, and I'm struggling more than I expected. She's busy with work and studying, so we barely talk anymore. That's why I'm here. Sitting at home alone every night is starting to get to me." Andrea, as I later learned her name was, offered a sympathetic smile. "You must miss her." "More than I can say," I admitted. "It's just been hard, feeling so disconnected. Coming here isn't about meeting anyone. I just needed to get out of the house and be around people." Andrea leaned forward slightly. So, you're not looking for anything else? Just conversation? Her bluntness surprised me, but I appreciated her directness. Exactly. I'm loyal to my wife, but that doesn't mean I can't enjoy a good conversation. She seemed to approve of my answer. Well then, let's keep talking. Our conversation flowed easily after that. Andrea shared that she and her husband had grown apart after their kids moved out, realizing they were strangers after years of focusing on family. They'd split 6 months earlier on amicable terms, and Andrea was now relishing her independence. Still, she admitted, she wasn't closed off to the idea of meeting someone if the right person came along. We talked for over an hour before her friends signaled they were ready to leave. Andrea hesitated for a moment, clearly debating whether to stay, but ultimately chose to go. It felt like a compliment that she'd even considered lingering, knowing there was no romantic potential between us. After weeks of feeling overlooked by Penny, it was refreshing to be seen and appreciated, even in a platonic way. As the weeks passed, Penny's calls became even shorter and more sporadic. When I tried to bring it up, her response was dismissive. Stop acting like a child, Mike, she snapped. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Acting like a child? I countered. I'm just pointing out that we barely talk anymore. But my words didn't seem to matter. After that, she didn't call for 5 days. Frustrated and tired of feeling insignificant, I started going to the bar more often. My plans to visit Penny were canceled again when she told me her workload was too overwhelming. The rejection stung. It felt like I wasn't worth the effort. After 10 weeks apart, I was no longer a priority, just an inconvenience in her busy life. In our recent conversations, Penny didn't even ask about my life or what I was up to. The following week, she claimed she wasn't feeling well, blaming heavy periods and saying she wasn't in the mood for a visit. I wasn't surprised. Frustrated by her continued indifference, I broke our usual routine and called her cell phone. One of her roommates picked up. Penny's taken some sleeping pills and gone to bed, she explained. She asked me to hold on to her phone so she wouldn't be disturbed. While Penny seemed increasingly detached, I found myself settling into an unexpectedly active social life. It beat sitting at home waiting for calls that never came. I joined a Thursday night darts league, filling in for a team that needed an extra player, and started attending Tuesday trivia nights, which turned out to be surprisingly enjoyable. I met new people, but I was always clear about my boundaries. Single women knew upfront that I was married and not looking to cheat. Andrea became a regular at the pub with her friends, and we often chatted when she was there. She briefly dated a guy, but ended things after 2 weeks. He failed the severity test, she said with a laugh, leaving me both amused and curious about her standards. Andrea avoided prying into my situation with Penny, and she never offered opinions about my wife. I appreciated her discretion, especially since I was grappling with my own frustration and anger. After 14 weeks apart, Penny and I still barely spoke, and when we did, the conversations felt cold and rushed. I started to wonder if I even mattered to her anymore. Yes, she was busy, but would regular texts or short calls really interfere with her goals? It felt like I'd been discarded, cast aside as though I didn't exist. The more time I spent with Andrea, the more I enjoyed her company. She was warm, clever, and refreshingly down to earth. Her humor was infectious, and I found myself looking forward to our talks. When she needed help, like dealing with an overly persistent guy at the bar, she'd give me a subtle signal. I'd step in, kiss her cheek, and play the role of her boyfriend until the guy got the hint and left. Then we'd laugh about it and carry on as usual. What troubled me most was how much I looked forward to seeing her. Our conversations weren't romantic or inappropriate. We debated trivial topics like Pepsi versus Coca-Cola. But when she wasn't there, I couldn't deny the pang of disappointment I felt. For the first time, I truly understood how easily someone could be drawn into an affair. Clichés I'd once dismissed, my wife doesn't understand me or my wife ignores me, suddenly felt uncomfortably familiar. I wasn't justifying infidelity, but I finally understood how someone might slide into it. I was tempted, more than I cared to admit. I never imagined I'd be in such a position, but as Penny's indifference grew, so did the temptation. I hadn't crossed any lines with Andrea. So far, I'd managed to keep things respectful and appropriate, but I wasn't blind to the fact that my self-control was being tested. Penny's behavior didn't help. Her growing absence and lack of interest in our marriage left me feeling like I was teetering on the edge. I wondered if she felt the same temptations, but I quickly dismissed the thought. Between her work and studies, she didn't have the time or energy to think about me, let alone someone else. We were only halfway through her 6-month course, but I knew something had to change. If things stayed the same, or got worse, our marriage might not survive the remaining weeks. I never thought I'd be the kind of man tempted to stray, but I could no longer deny how real the possibility had become. Determined to salvage our relationship, I decided to call Penny instead of waiting for her to reach out. "Hi, sweetheart," I said, trying to sound upbeat. "I can't talk for long," she replied immediately. I swallowed my irritation. Getting angry wouldn't help. "I understand you're busy," I said evenly, "but I need you to make time for this. I'll keep it brief." She sighed impatiently, a sound that only added to my frustration, but I pressed on. "Penny, it feels like you don't have time for me anymore. Our calls are rare, and when we do talk, you act like I'm a burden. I have feelings and needs too. It's like you've forgotten there are 2 people in this marriage. Yes, I want to support and encourage you, but I also need some of your attention." Her response was swift and defensive. "Are you kidding me, Mike? I've spent my entire adult life putting this family first. Now it's my turn." I clenched my jaw but stayed calm. "You're making it sound like I haven't sacrificed for this family. I've given up so much to put you and the kids first. So tell me, Penny, when exactly was it my turn? Did I miss it while working overtime to make ends meet?" Her voice rose sharply. "How dare you, Mike? How dare you? I've worked just as hard and sacrificed just as much. You ignorant son of a—" I let her rant without interrupting, listening as she hurled insults and anger my way. When she finally paused, I took a deep breath and tried again. "Penny, this isn't about who sacrificed more. It's about our marriage. If we keep going like this, there won't be anything left by the time you finish this course." Her response was cold and dismissive. "You're being so dramatic. Stop whining and grow up, Mike." Her words stung, and I hung up before the conversation could spiral further. My phone buzzed almost immediately with her return call. "Look, I'm sorry," she said, her tone softening, "but you have to understand how important this is to me. I need this. Our marriage is fine." I bit back the urge to argue. She wasn't listening. "I miss you too," she added, "and I'm sorry you're struggling, but in the long run, this is for us. You'll see. We're already halfway there. When I get back, I'll take care of the house again, and you'll eat properly." Her words felt hollow, but I said nothing. I just hoped we'd have a marriage left to fix when she returned. Her tone had felt patronizing, as if I were a helpless child who couldn't function without her. Yes, it's hard being without her, I thought, but not for the reasons she thinks. What I missed wasn't just her presence. It was the deeper connection we shared, the closeness, the conversations, the sense of partnership. After nearly 3 decades of marriage, her absence left a gaping hole in my life, as though a part of me had been severed. I made a vague noise of acknowledgement, which she seemed to take as agreement. "Great. Glad we're on the same page. I really have to go," she said briskly, ending the call without so much as a goodbye, let alone an "I love you." Frustrated and restless, I grabbed my keys and drove to the pub, hoping a beer would help dull the disappointment. But as I sat nursing my drink, I realized coming here was a mistake. I wasn't in the mood for small talk or the friendly noise of the bar. My emotions churned, hurt, anger, and something harder to name. Like a shadow of anxiety I couldn't shake. Not even Andrea's cheerful wave across the room could lift my spirits. I finished my drink quickly, muttered a half-hearted goodbye, and left. When I got home, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Andrea. "Are you okay? You didn't seem yourself tonight. If you need someone to talk to, I'm here." I stared at the message, feeling an unexpected lump in my throat. In just a few months, Andrea, a woman I barely knew before all this, showed more concern for me than my wife of 28 years. The realization hit me like a punch. I slumped onto the couch, staring at the text, unsure how to respond. For the first time, I felt a flicker of fear. Had I let Andrea get too close? Was I crossing a line emotionally? I hadn't confided in her about Penny or our marriage, and I'd avoided saying anything that I wouldn't admit openly. But still, I could sense how easy it would be to let things slide into dangerous territory. I needed to be careful. After composing myself, I typed out a reply. "Thanks, Andrea. Just a rough day, but I'm fine. See you Thursday if you're around. Take care." I reread it several times, checking the tone before hitting send. Then I grabbed some leftovers, eating them cold at the kitchen counter, while my mind wandered. Penny and I hadn't even discussed my next visit. She hadn't brought it up, and I didn't want to wait any longer to see her. I decided on the spur of the moment to surprise her with a trip. Maybe seeing her in person would remind us both of what we were fighting for. Friday afternoon, I left work early, caught a flight, and by early evening, I was standing outside Penny's place. The door opened to a young woman I recognized from previous calls, her roommate, Jenny. She looked surprised, but smiled and led me into their modest living room. "Penny and Gail aren't back from school yet," she explained. As I reached for my phone to let Penny know I was there, Jenny stopped me. "I can call her," she offered quickly. Before she could dial, the sound of a key turning in the lock drew our attention. Penny stepped inside, her expression flickering between shock and delight. "Mike," she said, giving me a quick kiss. "What a surprise. Be right back," she added, heading straight to the bathroom. I noticed she took her phone with her, which struck me as odd, but I kept quiet. Jenny and I exchanged some awkward small talk while waiting. Penny took longer than I expected, and when she finally emerged, she barely paused before disappearing into her room, calling back, "Keep chatting with Jenny." Jenny seemed to relax once Penny was out of sight, and our conversation became more natural. We even laughed a little, though I couldn't shake the strange vibe in the apartment. Penny busied herself in her room, tidying up and carrying sheets to the laundry. I watched her move back and forth, wondering if she was trying to make an impression, like she used to when we first started dating. Eventually, Penny invited me to shower and freshen up before we headed out to dinner. I noticed her open the window wide, letting in the chilly air, something she'd always hated, but I chose not to comment. Seeing her undressed again after so many months stirred feelings I'd been suppressing. I suggested skipping dinner and enjoying some private time, but she shook her head, laughing. "Patience, Mike. After dinner, I'm starving." We ended up at a seafood restaurant Penny had mentioned before. Over 2 bottles of Riesling, we talked and laughed, revisiting memories that felt light years away. When I cracked my old joke about oysters, "They're supposed to be an aphrodisiac, but I ate 12 once, and the last 3 didn't work," she laughed so hard that for a moment everything felt right. But something was off. Penny's phone buzzed constantly, and she seemed glued to it, answering texts in the middle of our conversation. I tried to ignore it at first, but it was impossible not to notice. Finally, I decided to speak up. "Penny, I don't want to make a big deal out of this, but texting at dinner feels a little rude." She looked up, a hint of guilt in her expression. "I know, but some of the younger students see me as a mentor. They need advice. I won't be long." Her explanation didn't sit well with me, but I let it go, focusing instead on trying to make the evening feel like one of our old date nights. Penny asked how long I planned to stay, her tone so casual it bordered on indifferent. It felt like she was already calculating how soon she could send me home. I swallowed my disappointment and reminded myself that this was about reconnecting, no matter how uncomfortable the vibe felt. When we returned to her place, it was nearly 11. Another car was parked in the driveway, which Penny explained belonged to Gail, her other roommate, who worked late shifts at a restaurant. The apartment was quiet and dimly lit. After dinner, wine, and the earlier shower, I was ready to reconnect in more ways than one. I picked Penny up and carried her to her room, laying her on the bed. But as much as I wanted to lose myself in her, there was a strange tension in the air, something unspoken that kept me from fully relaxing. It felt as though the woman in my arms was a stranger, and that unsettling feeling lingered long after we turned out the lights. Dinner had been awkward, like we were 2 strangers trying to make small talk. The conversation lacked any of the warmth or ease we used to share, and I found myself thinking back to the beginning of our relationship. Those uncertain, nerve-wracking early days of trying to impress one another, except this time it felt hollow, like we were going through the motions. Later, as Penny lay sprawled on the bed, slightly drunk, I began to undress her. To my surprise, she responded in a way that felt completely unfamiliar. Her moans were louder, her movements more exaggerated, almost theatrical. Penny had always been reserved in moments like this, her modesty a hallmark of her personality. But tonight, there was none of that restraint. She was wild, almost unrecognizable. Before I could make sense of her unusual behavior, a loud, impatient knock shattered the moment. The flimsy bedroom door rattled as a woman's irritated voice cut through the air. "Penny! Seriously, Jake? 3 nights in a row? Some of us need sleep!" The words landed like a punch to the gut. My mind raced, piecing together every odd detail from the past few months. The shaved pubic area, the sudden resistance to my visits, the awkwardness earlier in the evening, the fresh bed linens, and her prolonged time in the bathroom when she first got home. It all made sense now. Jake? Was he the one she had been texting at dinner? I turned to look at Penny, and her wide-eyed expression confirmed everything. Her lips parted as though to offer an explanation, but no words came out. She looked disheveled, her makeup smeared, her hair in disarray. The legs I once admired now made my stomach churn. I felt sick. Without saying a word, I began dressing, every movement stiff and deliberate as I struggled to keep my anger in check. My hands moved mechanically as I zipped my carry-on bag. I refused to look at her, knowing my temper was teetering on the edge. She wasn't worth losing control over. Penny, sensing my resolve, suddenly became defensive. 6 months is a long time, she shouted. You've only been gone for 15 weeks. What did you expect? I bet you've been cheating too. Why should I sit here and wait while you're off doing whatever you want? I deserve to have fun too. For once, I felt young and free, not like some old woman stuck waiting to become a grandmother. Her words barely registered. I slung my bag over my shoulder and muttered, "At least now I know." Desperation seeped into her tone. "It's not just Jake," she yelled. "We can get through this. We can fix it." I stopped and turned, my voice calm but firm. "No, Penny, we can't." She started shouting again as I walked down the hallway, her words becoming more frantic with each step I took. Muffled voices from the other rooms signaled her roommates had noticed the commotion, but I didn't care. My only goal was to leave. Reaching the front door, I yanked it open just as someone pulled it from the other side. Standing there was a young woman I assumed to be Gail, her face a mix of confusion and curiosity. Behind her, Jenny hovered uncertainly, her expression caught somewhere between pity and discomfort. Gail's brow furrowed as she asked sharply, "Who are you?" Without pausing, I walked past her, tossing a reply over my shoulder. "Penny's ex-husband." I emphasized the word ex before stepping into the cool night air and letting the door slam shut behind me. I took a deep breath, the crisp air biting at my skin, and felt a strange mix of anger and relief. My marriage was over, that much was clear. There was a plane to catch, a lawyer to call, and a lifetime of pieces to pick up. But for now, there was also a story to tell, a shattered heart to mend, and perhaps in time someone new to share a drink with. Maybe even a honey blonde with a kind smile and a listening ear waiting at the bar.
I flinched when Mike picked up the phone, startled by the sound of his voice. After 4 days of unanswered calls, I'd all but given up hope of reaching him. "Penelope, what's wrong? I can't talk for long," he said, his tone clipped and businesslike. The words I'd rehearsed, the apologies I'd planned, they all evaporated. I froze, blindsided not by anger or sorrow, but by his indifference. He didn't sound hurt, furious, or even disappointed. Instead, there was an air of detachment, like I was a distant acquaintance interrupting his day. I opened my mouth to speak, but hesitated too long. His sigh crackled through the line, heavy with impatience. "Look, Penelope, I don't have time for this. If it's important, say it quickly. I'm busy. It's quiz night." "Quiz night?" The words tumbled out before I could stop them. "That's your excuse? How can you prioritize a trivia game over our marriage?" His response was icy. "Clearly, Penelope, you don't understand. Quiz night is important to me. I need this." The echo of those last words, "I need this," stung. They brought back memories of conversations we'd had in recent months, ones I'd brushed aside or dismissed. Now they hung between us, sharper and more cutting than I'd expected. "Don't belittle our marriage like that," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "We need to talk." Mike's tone turned exasperated. "Why should I bother? You don't listen anyway. I've got to go. My team relies on me. Maybe we'll talk later." The line went dead before I could respond. I stared at my phone, half expecting it to flash back to life, as if some mistake had been made. But no, he'd hung up. Just like that. The glass of wine I'd poured earlier, meant to calm my nerves, now tasted bitter, like regret itself. I sat motionless, replaying the brief conversation in my mind, anger and sadness bubbling under the surface. I should have gone home days ago. Waiting had been a mistake. I should have confronted him in person, no matter how difficult it might have been. But I hadn't. I'd hesitated, trapped by a swirl of fear, guilt, and self-doubt. And then there was the training program. It wasn't just an excuse. It was a real priority. The exam on Monday was critical, the culmination of 3 months of work. I'd poured my energy into preparing for it, hoping that the focus would keep me from obsessing over Mike's silence. Now the exam was over, and I was out of distractions. Still, I hadn't booked a ticket home. I told myself it was because of logistics, but deep down, I knew the truth. Facing Mike on his turf, our house, felt too real. The apartment here had become a bubble, a place where I could pretend everything was still under control. I glanced at my phone, my thumb hovering over the messages from Jake. The temptation to open them was overwhelming, but I resisted, locking the screen and setting it aside. I walked to the kitchen, hoping food might distract me, but even the simplest meal felt like too much effort. Defeated, I returned to my room and lay down, staring blankly at the ceiling. The thoughts I'd been avoiding came rushing in. How could I make Mike understand that my actions weren't about him? That they didn't diminish my love for him or the life we'd built together? Our marriage wasn't in jeopardy. It never had been. My heart still belonged to him, and it always would. A flicker of frustration surfaced. Why couldn't he see past his pride? Yes, I'd made mistakes. Big ones. But they didn't define us. My indiscretions were physical, nothing more. My heart, my mind, my loyalty to him as a partner had never wavered. Couldn't he understand that? And yet, a small voice inside me whispered that I was rationalizing. My actions had hurt him deeply, no matter how I tried to frame them. I rolled over and my eyes landed on Mike's deodorant sitting on the nightstand, a forgotten remnant of his hasty departure. I picked it up, the scent hitting me like a tidal wave of memories. Tears burned my eyes as I clutched it to my chest, the pain of his absence sharper than ever. I tried to focus on the positives. Mike hadn't told the kids. They hadn't called, which meant they were still unaware. He hadn't exploded in anger or thrown insults at me. That had to be a good sign, didn't it? But another thought crept in, dark and insidious. What if his calm demeanor was just a mask? What if behind the scenes he was planning his next move, meeting with lawyers, freezing our accounts, changing the locks? My stomach churned and I shot out of bed, rushing to grab my laptop. My hands shook as I opened it and logged into our shared bank account. Relief washed over me when I saw the balance untouched. Mike hadn't done anything, yet. But as I stared at the screen, another wave of anxiety hit. Just because he hasn't acted now doesn't mean he won't, a voice in my head whispered. Closing the laptop, I buried my face in my hands. I couldn't escape the gnawing sense that everything was slipping further out of control. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the keyboard, before transferring a small sum to an old account in my name. It was just enough for a plane ticket, food, and transportation. Barely a safety net, but enough to feel like I had options. As I moved to log out, a notification caught my eye. A message. From Jake. Jake, the gorgeous 25-year-old whose flirtation had been a fleeting escape from reality. Too old to date my daughters, but young enough to make me feel alive, desired, and reckless. My eyes welled up again as the emotions I'd been pushing down surged forward. I hated myself for wanting to call him, for wanting him to look at me the way he had before, with hunger and admiration, for the way his words had made me feel hot and unstoppable. I cursed myself for letting it start in the first place. One too many drinks at a class gathering, trying to blend in with peers so much younger than me. It had felt exhilarating, forbidden, and intoxicating. And then it had spiraled. I knew if I responded to Jake's messages he would come, and I wanted him to. That thought sent a jolt of guilt through me, and I whimpered, biting my knuckle to keep the sound from escaping. I had to stop. If Mike came back and found out, it would be the end of everything. Turning onto my stomach, I accidentally knocked the laptop off the bed. It hit the floor with a loud crash, but I didn't care. I buried my face in the pillow, tears soaking the fabric as I cried for everything I'd lost, and for the steep price I knew I'd have to pay to rebuild what remained. I couldn't give in again. I couldn't let this dependence destroy what little chance I had left. At some point, exhaustion overtook me. When I opened my eyes, sunlight was pouring through the window. I felt groggy and drained, but I forced myself out of bed and into the bathroom. The shower scalded my skin, grounding me. Later, as I inserted my key into the lock of our house, relief flooded me. It turned without resistance. Mike hadn't changed the locks. It was a small mercy, but a powerful one. He hadn't drained the bank accounts, hadn't told the kids, and hadn't filed for divorce. Days had passed since our last strained conversation. He'd had plenty of time to act, but the lock worked. This had to be a sign. Mike would forgive me. It might take time, but he would. He loved me, and he was a good man, the best man I'd ever known. Of course, our marriage wouldn't be the same. I would have to earn his trust again, every day. And Mike? He would carry the knowledge that I had turned to someone else for comfort. But we could survive this. We had to. Opening the door, I stepped into a house that felt almost foreign after so many months. I expected chaos, a mess left by a man living alone, but was instead met with pristine order. The living room was spotless. Curious, I wandered into the kitchen. Clean. The dining room? Not a speck of dust. It was as if he'd prepared for my return, which felt like another hopeful sign. But where was he? It was 6:30. He should have been home by now, probably looking for dinner. I walked to the stove and ran my fingers over the burners. Cold. Opening the fridge, I found it fully stocked, with a plate of fried chicken and vegetables neatly wrapped in plastic. Had he made dinner for me? Or had he eaten out? There were no dirty dishes in the sink, no crumbs on the counter. He could have cleaned up, but something about the scene didn't sit right. I considered texting him, but our last conversation made me hesitate. He hadn't responded to my flight details or offered to pick me up from the airport. Sighing, I filled the kettle to make tea, trying to make sense of the mixed signals. On one hand, he hadn't done anything to suggest he wanted to end our marriage. On the other, his silence spoke volumes. Perhaps he was trying to punish me, letting me stew in my own guilt. Tea in hand, I sat at the dining table and stared at the chairs around me. Memories of family dinners flooded my mind. Laughter, banter, the chaotic energy of raising kids. We weren't wealthy, but our home had always been rich with love. Mike would remember that too. He wasn't the kind of man to let our children feel torn between their parents. For their sake, if nothing else, he would try to forgive me. But where was he? Leaving my tea untouched, I climbed the stairs to our bedroom. It was clear he'd been home recently. The faint warmth of the bathroom lingered. Once again, the immaculate state of the room struck me. Mike had always been tidy, but I had expected some signs of bachelor life creeping in during my absence. Deep in thought, I returned downstairs, absently stirring my now cold tea. Something nagged at the back of my mind, a fragment of a conversation from early in my course. A name. Mike had mentioned someone. Was it John? Jason? None of those seemed right. And then it came to me. Jeff. I darted to the sideboard where we kept an old notebook, a relic from the days when we were too lazy to save numbers in our phones. Flipping through the worn pages, I found the entry. Jeff Saunders. The name was scrawled under S with a cell number added in a different ink, clearly an update from years later. I stared at the number, my heart pounding. Maybe Jeff held the missing pieces of the puzzle. I punched Jeff's number into my phone, my hands trembling as I pressed call. The line rang several times before it went to voicemail. Frustrated, I slammed my hand on the table, the sound echoing in the quiet room. A sudden ding from the microwave snapped me out of my anger. I'd forgotten all about the leftovers I'd reheated. Needing a distraction, I retrieved the plate and sat at the table. The chicken was better than I expected, perfectly seasoned and still moist. For a fleeting moment, I thought about Mike. Maybe I'd suggest he cook more often once we worked through this mess. That is, if we still had a chance to fix things. I set the empty plate in the sink, wiped my hands, and stared at my phone. My nerves twisted as I prepared to call Jeff again. What if Mike had confided in him? What if Jeff threw every detail back at me in anger? But avoiding the call wasn't an option. Taking a deep breath, I pressed redial. This time he picked up on the third ring. Hello? His voice was wary, with an edge I couldn't quite place. Hi, Jeff, I said, my voice trembling slightly. It's Penny Granger. I was wondering, do you know where Mike is? There was a long pause, filled with the muffled noise of voices and laughter in the background. My grip on the phone tightened as I waited. Penny, he said at last, his tone neutral. Long time. Yes, I said awkwardly. It has been. How are you? And Jane, the kids? Jane's fine, he said, his tone pointed as if daring me to forget her name. The kids are great. Thanks for asking. And you? There it was, that knowing tone in Jeff's voice. He already knew. I've been better, I admitted, fumbling for words. Is Mike with you? Yes, he is, Jeff said. And where are you? I asked, trying to keep my tone steady. We're at a darts competition, he replied casually. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to stay calm. That sounds fun. Where's it being held? At the pub, Jeff answered. Which pub? I pressed, trying to mask my growing frustration. My local one, he said with infuriating nonchalance. Jeff, I said tightly, my patience slipping. What's the name of the pub? The Royal, he finally admitted. I clenched my jaw, refusing to give him the satisfaction of another question. Thank you, I said curtly and hung up. His parting words, dripping with sarcasm, anything for Mike's loving wife, echoed in my mind. I opened my laptop and typed The Royal Pub into the search bar. Predictably, there were several results. Royal Arms, Royal George, Royal Oak. After combing through event pages and websites, I finally found it. The Royal Oak, hosting a couples darts competition. I grabbed my bag and paused at the hallway mirror. My reflection stared back, disheveled and far from my best. With shaking hands, I combed my hair and touched up my makeup. It wasn't perfect, but it would have to do. Sliding into the driver's seat of my car, I punched the Royal Oak's address into my GPS. The drive was short, but it felt like an eternity. My mind raced with questions and scenarios, none of which brought me any comfort. When I arrived, I was relieved to see the pub had its own parking lot. After squeezing into one of the last spaces, I sat in the car for a moment, trying to collect myself. The noise from inside reached my ears, laughter and chatter spilling out as someone opened the door. Taking a deep breath, I got out and headed in. The pub's main room was packed, the air warm with the hum of voices and the occasional thud of darts hitting their mark. My eyes scanned the room, searching for Mike. When I finally spotted him, my stomach twisted. He was seated near the dartboards, watching a game intently. Beside him sat a blonde woman, her posture relaxed, her hand resting casually on the table near his. She wasn't watching the game. She was watching the door, watching me. Our eyes locked, and in that instant, I knew. Her expression was calm but knowing, as though she had been expecting me. I froze, heat rising to my cheeks as she leaned closer to Mike and lightly touched his hand. Mike turned to her first, then followed her gaze to meet mine. I don't know what I had prepared for, anger, sadness, or even guilt. But it wasn't this. His face showed no emotion. He looked steady, composed, and completely unaffected. That calmness cut deeper than any outburst could have. I didn't realize someone was standing beside me until a familiar voice broke through the haze. Penny, Jeff said, stepping into my line of sight. I startled, taking a small step back. Jeff, I stammered. I came to see Mike. I figured, he said dryly, his tone far from welcoming. Is he okay? I asked, the words tumbling out. I mean, after everything? Jeff raised an eyebrow. He's fine, better than fine, actually. Better? I repeated, incredulous. How could he be better? He's just hiding how hurt he is, isn't he? Mike's not the kind of man to let everyone see his pain. Hiding it? Jeff said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. If that's true, he deserves an award. I glanced past Jeff to see Mike laughing at something the blonde said. She leaned in closer, handing him a dart. He smiled warmly and lightly patted her hand before focusing on the dartboard. My chest tightened. Whatever this was, it wasn't casual. I felt a sharp pang of jealousy and regret. Who is she? I demanded, my voice low but firm. Jeff smirked. Andrea. She's been great for him. They make a good team, don't you think? I wanted to scream, to cry, to march over to Mike and demand answers. But I couldn't move. Instead, I stood there rooted to the spot as everything I thought I knew about my husband and our marriage crumbled around me. I had always understood the fleeting nature of my attraction to younger men. They were intoxicating in their way, charming, vibrant, and a welcome distraction. But ultimately, they left me hollow. Mike, on the other hand, had been my foundation. He offered something real, something enduring. He was the man who provided substance when I needed it most. I tried to sound casual as I pressed further, though my voice betrayed me. Is she here with someone? Married? Jeff's smirk widened, and I could tell he was enjoying my discomfort. Yes, she's here with someone. No, she's not married. A knot tightened in my stomach, and I felt my heartbeat quicken as I forced myself to ask the inevitable. Who is she here with? With Mike, he said, his tone flat, as if delivering a weather report. Even though I'd prepared myself for this, the words landed like a blow. I stumbled back a step, unable to mask the pain in my voice. Well, that didn't take long. Jeff's gaze hardened, his smirk fading. On the contrary, he said coldly. Mike's had 4 months to get used to being alone. He glanced back at the pair, watching as Andrea leaned in to whisper something to Mike, her laugh soft but unmistakably passionate. Jeff's lips curled into a faint smile. And it looks like he's adjusted just fine, he added, his tone sharp enough to cut. When he turned back to me, the smile was gone, replaced by a steely glare. But then again, so have you, he said, his words striking like a final verdict. It's been 8 years since the divorce, but the regret hasn't eased. Not a day goes by that I don't wish I could undo the choices that led to our separation. When it became clear that reconciliation was out of reach, I buried my pain in the arms of younger men. It was an escape, but a hollow one. Each fleeting connection only underscored what I'd lost. The thrill diminished with every encounter, leaving me chasing an illusion of fulfillment that slipped further out of reach. My relationships grew shorter, emptier, and more desperate. I crossed lines I once believed were beneath me, all in pursuit of something that no longer existed. Now I sit in my kitchen surrounded by silence. The house that once brimmed with warmth and laughter feels cold and empty without Mike. The echoes of a life I destroyed linger in every corner. The clock reminds me that it's time to leave for work. I grab my bag and head for the door, pausing briefly to catch my reflection in the mirror. A 56-year-old woman stares back at me, her face marked by the passage of time. The youthful glow that once turned heads has faded, and the men I once charmed, those vibrant 20-somethings, are now closer to 30 or 40, their interest waning. What options do I have? The good men my age have no interest in someone with a reputation like mine. I've thought about moving, starting fresh on the other side of the country. But that would mean leaving my children, and I already don't see them enough as it is. Meanwhile, I imagine Mike and Andrea living the life I threw away. They're probably lounging on a beach somewhere, sipping cocktails and enjoying the love I squandered. And here I am, changing hospital sheets, taking patient temperatures, and mourning the future I destroyed. My marriage, my career, my dignity. For what? For sugar. Sweet, fleeting sugar that dissolved the moment I tasted it. Blinking back tears, I square my shoulders and open the door. The world keeps moving, indifferent to my regrets. And as I step outside, I remind myself that no one cares. So why should I? After all these years, as I sit here reflecting, I realize there's no escaping the choices that shape our lives. Regret, it seems, is a companion you can never truly shake off, one that lingers in the quiet moments and sneaks into your thoughts when you least expect it. But regret is not the end of the story. It's a reminder, a constant whisper that life, no matter how messy, is still unfolding. Every misstep, every misjudgment has led me to this point. Not a perfect ending, perhaps, but one with its own kind of clarity. And now, as the dusk fades into night, I take a deep breath. I can't rewrite the past, but maybe, just maybe, I can still shape the future. It won't be easy, and it won't be quick, but somewhere inside, I know. This chapter isn't the final one. The pen is still in my hand.
As a skilled mechanic and committed Marine, John stood out for volunteering to serve in Indochina. In March 1967, he discussed his plans with his wife, Sandra. Married for 3 years, they had a small house and were planning to start a family. Sandra worked as a paralegal, and with her income and his, they managed well financially, with good savings for emergencies. Sandra cried but understood John's strong sense of duty. John was strong and muscular, known as a tough fighter. Marrying his high school sweetheart had calmed him down, though he could still fight if necessary. They said their goodbyes and spent a passionate night together before he left. "You'd better come back in one piece," she said, "and don't go after other women. This is mine, only mine," she added, grabbing his crotch. "Don't worry, sweetie," he said. "I'll take good care of myself, and you'd better behave while I'm away. I know how those wealthy lawyers are." "No problem, sweetie," she replied. "I promise to be good." Before leaving, John updated his will and set up automatic payments from his military salary to cover the mortgage and utilities. He treated himself to a tattoo reading, Death Before Dishonor. In Vietnam, John was a fire team leader. Initially met with skepticism as a reservist, he earned respect after several combat engagements. Unlike many Marines, he avoided local women, staying faithful to his wife Sandra, despite teasing from Lance Corporal Harker. Harker warned him about Jody, slang for men who had military wives whose husbands were deployed, but John trusted Sandra completely. John wrote to Sandra as often as possible and cherished her letters. Initially, he received letters every 2 weeks, but after a few months, they became less frequent. He found it odd, especially as he started receiving more letters from his parents, and even photos of Sandra in a swimsuit he hadn't seen before, wondering who had taken them. That Christmas, he received a card and letter from his parents, but nothing from Sandra. Concerned, but undistracted, he stayed vigilant in Vietnam. In mid-January 1968, stationed near Da Nang, rumors spread of an impending major attack by the enemy, Charlie, around the Tet Lunar New Year. At the end of the month, chaos erupted. John's position was heavily attacked, and they fought fiercely. Most of John's team, including Harker, passed. John was injured. John and other Marines were evacuated to Da Nang, then to a military hospital in San Francisco. Doctors saved his leg, though he faced a long recovery. The bullet missed major organs, and stitches fixed his cheek. His ear was bandaged, and nurses said the scar gave him a distinguished look, though he wasn't so sure. John's time in Vietnam was over. A Marine officer awarded him a Purple Heart and informed him he was being recommended for a Silver Star. John already had a Bronze Star with a Combat V and a Navy Commendation Medal. John's parents met him in San Francisco. He wondered where Sandra was and if she knew he was back in the States. His father, a veteran, chuckled. "Damn, son, I thought I taught you how to duck." His mother hugged him tightly and cried. "Where's Sandra?" John asked. His parents exchanged glances before responding. "I honestly don't know, John," his father finally said. "We tried calling the house and her office, but they kept saying she was out, and she never called back. I haven't seen her in weeks. I went by every weekend to maintain the yard and check on her, but nothing." "Tell him, Bob," John's mother said. "Tell me what, Mom?" John asked. "What's going on?" "John, the last time I saw Sandra was maybe 2.5 months ago. I was coming up the street to your house and saw a guy leaving. He got into a sports car, I think it was a Corvette, and drove off quickly. I saw Sandra at the door in a bathrobe waving goodbye to him," he said. "She didn't say anything when I arrived. I haven't seen her since then. I've been picking up the papers and collecting your mail when I go by. I'm sorry, son." John was heartbroken. He had believed she would stay loyal to him. Then he remembered what Harker said about Jody. Maybe he was right. Now he understood why he hadn't heard from her. "Was it a blue Corvette?" John asked. Bob nodded. "Yes, it was," he said. "Why? Do you know who owns it?" "Yeah," John replied. "It belongs to Eric Swagman, a junior partner at her firm. So she isn't even home long enough to pick up the mail?" "It doesn't seem like it," Bob said. "I hope you don't mind, but I saw a couple of utility and phone bills marked final notice, so I took care of them. I figured you wouldn't want to come home to a house without power or phone service." "Thanks, Dad," John said. "I'll pay you back when I get home, I promise." "Don't worry about it, son," Bob said. "Just focus on getting better. Don't stress about this until you're ready. If you want, I can look into getting a power of attorney. If she's not handling the bills, who knows what else she might have done? For all we know, she might have already cleaned you out." John asked a nurse for help in finding a military lawyer. Soon, a Navy lieutenant commander arrived and took notes as John and his parents explained the situation. He took out some papers from his briefcase. "I'll get these papers prepared for you, Corporal," he said. "They will give your parents special powers of attorney to handle the issues you mentioned. I suggest you see a family law attorney in your home state as soon as possible. I'll have the paperwork ready, and we can meet here this afternoon to sign and notarize it." "Thank you, sir," John said. After the lawyer left, Bob turned to his son. "As soon as we get home, John, I'll check the bank to see what's going on. I still have the house key you gave me, so I'll stop by and check on things there." You know, George Williams, who retired from the police force a couple of months ago, is now working as a private investigator. I can ask him to look into this if you want, Bob offered. I'm not sure I can afford a private investigator, Dad, John said. Bob shook his head. Don't worry about it, son, he said. George owes me a few favors. We worked together for 13 years on the force. Also, I'll talk to our family lawyer. I think he still handles family law cases. By the way, Bob continued, Mr. Wilkins said, your job at the shop is still available. He's been saving a quarter of your pay since you left as a return bonus. He said he wasn't going to let the best mechanic in the state slip away. But don't tell him I told you. John was grateful. Wilkins was a generous man, but didn't often show it. He was fair and honest with customers, but had a tough exterior that could be off-putting. That sounds good, Dad, John said, a tear rolling down his cheek. Damn that woman, he thought. His parents gave him a comforting hug. It'll be all right, son, his mother said. We'll get through this. A few hours later, the attorney returned with a notary. After signing the papers, John's parents left, promising to call with any news. They thanked the nurse, who assured them John was well cared for and would need extensive physical therapy arranged through the VA. John was finally alone to confront his life's mess. He rested but dreamt about his fallen Marines, not Sandra. A few days later, John got a call from his father. Bad news, John, Bob said. Sandra drained almost all of your checking and savings accounts. About 2 months ago, she took out $8,545 from your savings. I have the bank statement. She took the money out in cash. The only deposits in those 2 months were from your military pay. According to the bank and the teller, Sandra comes in a few days after each payday and withdraws everything except $5, just enough to keep the account active. She didn't open a new account, so I have no idea what she did with the money. All right, Dad, John said. Since you have power of attorney, take her name off the account. We don't have any credit cards, so that's not an issue. Will do, Bob said. I also went by the house. It's a mess. There's moldy food on the table, dishes piled up in the sink, and it smells terrible. It looks like she took all her clothes and personal stuff but left her wedding dress and album behind. I found her wedding and engagement rings in the bathroom trash. I'm sorry. At least the house is still standing, John said. Yeah, Bob replied. Your mother is there now, cleaning up and airing out the place. The bed is a mess. The sheets are badly stained. If I had to guess, Sandra probably had someone else in there. What do you want to do about it? Get rid of it, John said. Dispose of it and pile it up outside if you need to. I'll manage with a cot if I have to. All right, Bob said. I'll handle it. George offered to take your case for free. He said nothing is worse than someone who steals a soldier's wife while he's serving his country. I also found a top-notch lawyer who's agreed to handle your divorce for free. He can't stand Swagman, who apparently has a reputation for going after married women. George suggested we change all the locks on your house, and I agree. Are you okay with that? He asked. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea, Dad, John said. All right, we'll keep in touch. How are you holding up? Bob asked. I'm doing all right, Dad, really, John said. Who are you trying to convince, me or yourself? Bob asked. John smiled. His father always had a sharp insight. Dad, you've lost men in combat, right? John asked. He knew this was a silly question, given his father's service as a second lieutenant with the 1st Marine Regiment under Colonel Lewis B. Chesty Puller at the Chosin Reservoir in 1950. His father knew all about combat, sacrifice, and death. Yes, son, I have, Bob said. This might sound odd, Dad, but have you ever had dreams where they spoke to you? John asked. Oh, yes. At first, it was almost every night, but it became less frequent over time, Bob said. Have you ever gotten over it? John asked. You never completely get over it, John. It becomes a part of you. You have to make peace with it and learn to live with it, or it will consume you, Bob said. The next 2 weeks flew by for John. He heard from his parents daily with updates on Sandra, but never from her. She had moved in with Eric Swagman and was pregnant by him. Everyone at the office knew about their relationship. The divorce process was going smoothly. John's lawyer, Mike McGregor, was filing for divorce based on adultery and abandonment. He was also suing Eric for interfering with John's marriage and taking legal action against Sandra's employer for not upholding their moral standards. Mike mentioned possible additional charges against Swagman based on evidence from George. Bob mentioned that Sandra had a meltdown when she found out she was no longer listed on John's military pay account and couldn't access his money. She also discovered her house keys no longer worked. Bob and his wife told her to go to her boyfriend for help. John focused on his recovery, finding some amusement in Sandra's situation. His physical wounds were healing, but he struggled emotionally, grieving for his fallen Marines and hurt by his soon-to-be ex-wife's actions. John learned to move around using a crutch and cane, and the doctors agreed it was time to remove his cast. He was cleared to drive an automatic. Back in his room, John saw an orderly hanging up his cleaned uniforms, now with sergeant's stripes. A doctor explained he had been promoted and was being discharged, with physical therapy arranged at a VA facility near his home. John put on his freshly starched green uniform, grabbed his polished boots, and used a wheelchair and cane to go to the day room. In the day room, John was surprised to see his parents, doctors, nurses, orderlies, and Lieutenant Colonel Arvin Johnson, his reserve battalion commander. John stood up with the help of his cane, surprising everyone, and shook Lieutenant Colonel Johnson's hand. The colonel announced John's promotion to sergeant, expressing pride in John's loyalty and abilities, and joked, "And may God have mercy on your soul," causing laughter. John's parents pinned the new stripes on his uniform, thrilled at the honor. Lieutenant Colonel Johnson then read a citation awarding John the Silver Star Medal for his bravery in Vietnam. On January 30th, 1968, as a fire team leader near Da Nang, John led his team against overwhelming enemy forces, continuing to fight despite being wounded. His leadership and courage significantly contributed to the defense of Da Nang, upholding the highest standards of the Marine Corps and the Navy. Lieutenant Colonel Johnson pinned the medal on John's chest, thanked him for his service, and noted that his experience would be valuable for training troops. John's mother hugged him with tears in her eyes, while Bob wiped a tear and expressed pride. After packing his sea bag, John changed into a Class C uniform, short-sleeve khaki shirt and green trousers. He took a wheelchair ride to the lobby where his parents waited for a cab to the airport. At the airport, he got another wheelchair ride and gave the finger to some long-haired protesters who called him a baby ender. A few hours later, his parents wheeled him into his house. It no longer felt like a home since Sandra cheated on him, but he appreciated the privacy. His parents had stocked the fridge with beer and snacks, and his mother prepared his favorite dishes, including her famous lasagna. He changed into jeans and a t-shirt and put his gear away. At the bottom of his sea bag, he found a large Bowie-style knife he had found in Vietnam. The blade was rusty but clean and oiled, with a leather scabbard stamped with a winged creature holding a sword and the words "Marche au crève." He valued it and promised to find out its origins. He called his lawyer, Mike McGregor, and George to set up a meeting that afternoon. After a short rest, he checked on his pickup truck in the garage. It seemed in working condition, though he planned to do an oil change and tune-up soon. After inspecting his place, he grabbed a beer and sank into his recliner. His leg hurt, so he relaxed and turned on the TV, eventually settling on a game show for background noise. He called Wilkins to let him know he was finally back. "It's about damn time you got back," Wilkins said gruffly. "When do you think you can start working?" John explained the situation with Sandra and what the doctor said about his physical therapy. "No problem, son. Take the time you need to handle your stuff," Wilkins replied. "If you need to go to court or see the doctor, that's fine. I'm just glad you're home. Most of these kids don't even know the difference between a brake pad and a carburetor sometimes. If you can make it over here sometime this week, I've got a little welcome home gift for you." "I'll do that, thanks," John said, and ended the call. At last, Mike and George arrived, so John let them in, shook their hands, and offered them a beer. They accepted the offer and settled into the living room. "It's good to see you back, John," George said. "Your dad told me about your medal. Congrats, you earned it. Anyway, let's get to it. I've got something you need to hear." He pulled out a small reel-to-reel tape recorder with a tape already loaded. "Let me set this up for you," he said. "I've been keeping track of Sandra and Eric from the start. I followed them one night to a steakhouse on the edge of town and managed to sit right across from them. I'm not sure if they saw me, but they didn't notice the microphone hidden in the plants between our booths. There will be some background noise from waitresses and such, but you can clearly hear their conversation." He started the tape and turned up the volume. "So, Sandra, have you thought about my proposal?" said a male voice John recognized as Eric's. He could almost see the smug grin on his face. "I'm not sure I can do that to John, Eric. It's bad enough that I cheated on him and now I'm carrying your baby, but I don't think I can go through with this," Sandra replied. "Come on, babe. If anyone can do it, it's you. He's probably drowning his sorrows right now." "I bet he'd do anything to have you back," Eric said. "You don't know John very well, Eric. His sense of ethics wouldn't let him accept this. There's no way he'll agree to raise the baby as his, and he definitely won't share me with you," Sandra said. "No, he wouldn't share you. We won't let him. Look, you know I'm not cut out to be a father. John would be a better parent than me. Here's the plan. We get him to agree to our terms, or we threaten him with a divorce. We'll demand his house, half his income, alimony, and child support. Don't worry, I've already prepared the paperwork, Eric said. George stopped the tape. So, they really think I'm going to let her stay with him and let him raise her illegitimate child? John asked. Are they out of their minds? There's more, George said, starting the tape again. I don't know, Eric. John won't go for that, Sandra said. Come on, babe. You know he's so in love with you, he'd do anything, Eric said. You're not still in love with him, are you? Well, I still like him, she said. But I don't love him like I used to. Besides, you're much better in bed. John's face turned red with anger. This is what I get for loving that cheating woman, he thought. And I wouldn't leave you to go to Vietnam. What kind of fool does that? Eric said. John felt like punching the wall. You're right, she said. When he gets back, I'll talk to him. Okay? Do that, Eric said. Do you know when he's coming back? No. I haven't heard from him since January, and I haven't sent him anything since last year like you told me, she said. If he really wants to fight this, we have other options, Eric said. Like what? Sandra asked. Well, you know how sometimes houses can catch fire out of nowhere? Or how brakes can suddenly fail? Eric said. You're not going to hurt him, are you? Sandra asked. I won't be part of that. Don't worry, Eric said. I know people who could help with that. You'd be in the clear. If something happens to him, you'd get everything and be free of him. Well, I guess, Sandra said, but only as a last resort. Right. Only if we have no other choice. Let's see what happens when he gets back. George stopped the tape. That sounds like a plan to commit murder to me, John said. Both George and Mike agreed. It's also a conspiracy to commit fraud, and possibly theft since Sandra drained your bank accounts, Mike said. That's why I filed the court papers on the way over and pushed for a quick hearing. I also got an order of protection that keeps them at least 100 feet away from you, your house, and your parents. I know the person who schedules these things, so I'll be serving them with papers tomorrow morning. I spoke with the district attorney, and he's putting together a criminal case against them. I also talked to Lee Marcus, the senior partner at their firm. We've been friends for a long time, and he's furious about what they're doing. I told him we plan to sue the firm and mention the conspiracy to engage in criminal activity. By the time we're done, swagmen will be lucky to avoid jail, Mike said. Your dad and I still have connections in the police department, including the chief, George said. I spoke with a few of them, and they've agreed to keep an eye out for you. Any questions so far? George asked. Yeah, John said. What am I asking for in the divorce exactly? Mike handed him a folder with all the documents. Sorry, I forgot your dad was acting on your behalf, Mike said. Here's the paperwork. As I mentioned, we're filing for divorce based on adultery and abandonment. Since Sandra has a higher income, there won't be any alimony. You'll keep the house and everything in it because she left it and didn't pay any of the utilities. We're also demanding that she return $7,100, which is half of your joint accounts. Remember, she emptied both your checking and savings accounts and took all the money you had deposited. We're also asking that she return her rings and change back to her maiden name. She'll keep her clothes and her car. I've asked Lee to keep her employed, since she'll need some support during her pregnancy. From what we know, Swagman has just under $1 million, so we're suing him for $800,000. With that, his court costs and attorney fees for both this case and any criminal charges, he'll be nearly bankrupt. We're also asking the firm to pay $2 million for not enforcing their morals clause, Mike said. The firm will probably settle for around half that amount to avoid bad publicity. One last thing, John, Mike added. Do you have a set of dress blues? Yeah, John replied. Mike nodded. Great, Mike said. Get them cleaned and have all your medals and ribbons mounted. Wear them to court when the trial starts. I want everyone to see what kind of man Sandra and Eric have wronged. I have one more surprise for them, but I'll keep that to myself for now. That's fine with me, John said. I'll get the uniform ready. Just let me know when I need to be there. I will. Now, if you don't mind, I have a meatloaf and an apple pie waiting at home. John, take some time to relax, Mike said. I will, John said. I was thinking about going to the watering hole for another beer and catching up with some old friends. Just be careful, John, George warned. That neighborhood has gotten a bit rough since you were last here. Not rougher than Da Nang, I bet, John said. George and Mike laughed. Not quite, George said, but almost. After George and Mike left, John went to his bedroom, changed his shirt, and grabbed the knife, hoping to find a friend who was good with them. He locked up the house, hobbled to the garage, and started his truck. Man, that feels great, he thought, as the pickup roared to life. He drove off and headed to one of his old hangouts, stopping for gas on the way. He parked in front of the bar like he always did and took a look around. George was right. The place seemed a bit rougher than it did a year ago, but he thought, I've seen much worse. He went inside and made his way to the bar through the haze of cigarette smoke. He grabbed a beer and scanned the room, hoping to recognize someone, but no luck. This used to be a spot where regular guys like him would hang out and chat over a drink, but now it seemed like a hangout for gang members. He finished his beer and headed to his truck, hearing a woman cry for help in an alley. He saw a young woman surrounded by 5 or 6 men. Grabbing a knife from his truck, John quietly approached. One man was tearing the woman's dress. "Hey, leave the woman alone!" John shouted. The men paused, puzzled. One man with a switchblade moved toward John. John drew his own knife. "You want to play with knives?" John asked. The thug lunged, but John dodged, slashed his wrist, and kneed him in the groin. The rest of the gang began to retreat. 2 men stayed to confront John. He took one down with a punch to the throat and slashed the other from shoulder to waist. A man with a piece of wood snuck up behind John, hitting him in the face. The attacker fled as police arrived. An officer approached John. "Man, Harkness, didn't George warn you this area is dangerous?" "Yeah," John replied. "I guess I'm just too stubborn to listen." The officer surveyed the scene and instructed his partner to call for a couple of ambulances. He then grabbed 2 sets of handcuffs, went to the men on the ground, and restrained their hands behind their backs. Returning to John, the officer noticed the knife lying next to him. "Now that's a knife," he said. "Where did you get that, John?" "Picked it up in Vietnam," John answered. "Let me see it," the officer said. "Do you have a place to keep this thing?" John handed over the leather scabbard. The officer examined it closely. "French Foreign Legion? Really?" he asked. "Marine Corps," John said. "Just got back." "I know you were in the Marines, John. I'm talking about the markings on the scabbard. The emblem shows it's from the French Foreign Legion. The words under it mean march or die. This doesn't look like standard issue. I bet it belonged to a French soldier at some point." The officer put the knife back in its scabbard and handed it back to John. "You should put that somewhere safe before a tough cop takes it from you. Maybe frame it or something," he advised. John nodded. "Yeah, I'll do that," he said. The woman approached the officer. "Please don't arrest him, officer," she said. "He saved my life. These men were going to do something terrible to me." The officer looked at her torn dress. "It's all right, ma'am. He can go, but he needs to see a doctor, and we'll need a statement from you," he said. "I'll take him to the emergency room in my car, officer, and I'll give you my statement at the hospital. Is that okay?" she asked. The officer thought for a moment and then agreed. "All right, miss," he said. "You can follow me to the hospital." He shouted to his partner, who quickly came over. The second officer looked at the 3 men in handcuffs and whistled. "Wow," he said. "Isn't that Juan Mendoza, the gang leader we've been hearing about?" He was referring to the smaller man who attacked John first. The first officer nodded. "Yes, it is," he said. "And this guy took all 3 of them down?" the second officer asked. The first officer nodded again. "Looks like it," he said. "Unbelievable," the second officer said. By then, 2 ambulances had arrived, and paramedics were putting the gang members into them. The first officer helped John stand up. "So you didn't get enough of this in Vietnam?" he asked with a smile. John chuckled, even though it was painful. "Guess not," he said. "All I wanted was a beer with some friends." "Well, this lady will take you to the ER. Hand me your keys. My partner will drive your truck home, and I'll pick him up after I'm done at the hospital," he said. He pointed at John. "And stay away from this place. It's gotten rough. Drugs, gangs, you name it. All the guys are hanging out at the Rockwood on the other side of town these days." "Thanks, officer. I'll keep that in mind," John said. He followed the young woman, who introduced herself as Amelia Simmons, to her car, a small Dodge Dart. "Aren't you the guy who got a Silver Star in Vietnam?" she asked on the way to the hospital. "Yes," he said. "How do you know about that?" "Who doesn't? It was all over the news today," she said. "Why are you out here? Shouldn't you be home with your wife or something?" John couldn't hold back his tears and started quietly crying. He felt worse knowing that strangers seemed to care more about him than his so-called loving wife. "I'm sorry," she said. "I didn't mean to upset you. What happened?" John briefly explained the end of his marriage, and Amelia began to tear up. She parked in the emergency room lot, found a spot, and hugged him tightly, not caring about getting his blood on her dress. John felt quite embarrassed by her gesture. "You poor man," she said, tears streaming down her face. "That awful woman doesn't deserve you." John looked at her, puzzled. "Why are you crying?" he asked. "Those men were going to end me. But you jumped in to help, even though you could have been killed yourself." You didn't even know me, but you risked your life for me, she said, crying. I can never repay you for that. John hugged her back. You don't owe me anything, he said. Yes, I do, she insisted. I owe you everything. You put aside your own pain to help me, so I'm going to help you heal. No matter how long it takes, I'll mend your broken heart, she promised. I swear no one will ever hurt you again. Not like her, she said. You don't even know me, he said. You didn't know me either, she replied. But after tonight, I know all I need to know. John Harkness, you're my hero, my knight in shining armor. I want to care for you, hold you, and fill the emptiness in your heart. Please, let me do that for you. John thought about what she said. When he looked into her eyes, he saw only genuine love, no deceit. There was something beautiful about her that he couldn't quite describe. Maybe it was because of everything with Sandra. In his mind, he heard Harker's voice. Go for it, Corporal. Sorry, Sergeant. He smiled, knowing Amelia had no idea why. All right, John said, giving her a gentle kiss. Amelia hugged him tightly. You won't regret this, John, I promise, she said. They went into the hospital emergency room, where the officer waited while the doctor checked out both John and Amelia. The doctor cleaned the cut on John's cheek while x-rays were processed. After looking at the x-rays, he told John that nothing was broken and that the nail in the board had only scratched his skin. Amelia was also fine. John gave his account of what happened that night, and the officer seemed to accept it. John, the officer said, Amelia seems like a decent person, but she's had a tough time. Her parents died in a car accident a few years ago, and she's been struggling ever since. She has no family and barely gets by as a waitress. I know you have your own issues and don't need more problems, but it would be great if you could help her out. Maybe you two could support each other. Thanks, John said. Maybe you're right. He was surprised by what the officer shared. Amelia had never mentioned any of her difficulties, yet here she was comforting him. He felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Maybe it was love. Whatever it was, it felt a lot better than what Sandra had given him. The officer handed him a card. Call me if you need anything, he said before walking over to Amelia. You can follow me to John's place. I need to pick up my partner anyway, he added. She thanked him and they left the emergency room. They drove to John's house in silence. John had a lot on his mind. His soon-to-be ex-wife had betrayed him, his Marine friends were gone, and now there was Amelia. John didn't believe in coincidences, but he couldn't help but wonder. They were both hurting, yet they chose to set their own pain aside to support each other. When they arrived at John's house, he invited her inside after the officers left. Come on in, Amelia. I don't bite, and it's much more comfortable inside than in your car, he said. I don't want to be a burden, she replied. John grabbed one of her bags from the car. Don't worry about it, he said. It's no trouble. I have an extra room, and it's definitely safer than sleeping in your car. Okay, she said. I suppose you're right. After settling Amelia's things in the guest room, John invited her to the living room and offered her a cup of coffee. She accepted and made herself comfortable on the couch while he prepared their drinks. They shared their stories, with John explaining everything about his marriage and his service in Vietnam. Amelia did the same, sharing her own life story. She told John that her parents worked hard but struggled to make ends meet. They lived in an apartment when they died in a car accident, leaving her with nothing but the need to sell off everything she owned. There was no inheritance, and the little money she had went to covering her parents' final costs. She lost her job as a secretary when her boss moved away and ended up waiting tables at a small diner close to the alley where she was attacked. The pay was low, but she managed to get an apartment with a friend. Her friend, however, got a job in another state and left. Amelia couldn't afford the apartment on her own, so she moved in with a guy she had dated a few times. Unfortunately, he wanted more than she was ready to give and started being abusive. After a few weeks, she left and ended up back in her car, trying to save enough money to rent a room somewhere. Why don't you stay here? John suggested. I don't want to take advantage of you, she replied. I can't pay you anything, and it wouldn't look good with your divorce situation. That's okay, John said. You can use the spare bedroom and maybe help me with some housework. If anyone asks about my divorce, I'll just say you were homeless and I let you stay in exchange for helping around the house. That sounds fair, Amelia agreed. I hope you don't get tired of me. John laughed. No worries. I just hope you can handle looking at my face, he said, pointing to his cheek. She gently touched his scar and his left ear. I can manage, she said. Actually, I think it makes you look distinguished, like someone who doesn't put up with nonsense. He laughed again. Flattery will get you far, he said. Anyway, things might get a bit busy here for a day or two. Sandra and her boyfriend will be served papers tomorrow morning, so I expect a lot of phone calls after 9. I also have some errands to run. Want to come with me? Sure, she said. That sounds like fun. I'm off for the next couple of days anyway. Well, I'm exhausted and my leg is starting to hurt, so I'm heading to bed, John said. I'll come with you if that's okay, she said, following him down the hall. Would it be all right if I slept with you tonight? No closeness. I just need someone to hold me. Sure, he said. I promise I'll be good. She smiled and went to the bathroom to shower and change while John got ready for bed. By the time she returned, wearing just a long t-shirt, John was already under the covers. She climbed in beside him, and he instinctively put his arm around her. She rested her head on his shoulder with her arm draped over his chest. He thought to himself how nice it felt. They fell asleep and woke up the next morning with John spooning Amelia. I'm sorry, he said. Amelia smiled at him. Don't apologize, she said. I put your hand there last night because it felt good. And this felt good too, she added, lightly brushing her hand against his groin. I'm glad you like it, John said. They showered and got ready for the day. Amelia made breakfast while John got dressed. At 9:20 a.m., the phone rang. What's all this about a divorce, John? Sandra yelled. I don't want a divorce. And what's this about adultery and abandonment? I don't care what you want right now, Sandra, John said. You left the house, refused to pay the bills, took thousands from our accounts, slept with Eric Swagman, moved in with him, and now you're pregnant, either by him or someone else. Is that clear enough for you? I didn't know you were back, John, or I would have visited you, she said. That's a load of crap, John snapped. It was all over the news. Even people who don't know me have welcomed me home. But you? You're too busy with your boyfriend to care about your husband, he said. You don't get it, John. I still love you, she said, crying. No, you don't, John said angrily. I haven't heard from you since last year. I learned about everything from my parents when they visited me in the hospital after I got hurt. You didn't even send a card. How can you claim you love me while you're sleeping with that loser? But I do love you, John, she insisted. No, you don't, John said. What did you tell that guy when you talked about me raising your child? Oh, right. I don't love him anymore. That's fine with me because right now I hate you so much I wouldn't help you if you were on fire. John, how do you know what I said? She asked through her tears. He had never talked to her like this before. And you don't really mean that, do you? Just sign the divorce papers and let's be done with it. We're over, John said. And I'm going to take down your boyfriend, too. Suddenly, Eric came on the line. Listen up, you jerk. I'm going to destroy you, Eric said. I don't think so, idiot. Tougher guys than you have tried, and they're dead now. You want to mess with me? I'll beat you so badly you'll be begging for mercy. You'll feel like you've been hit by a freight train. Check those papers. There's a restraining order against both you and Sandra. I know you two plan to burn down my house and mess up my truck. If you come near me, you'll get a bullet up your rear end. By the time I'm done with you, you'll be lucky if you don't end up in jail, John said. We'll see about that, Eric replied. Sandra came back on the phone. John, please, let's talk this over. We don't need a divorce. Eric and I have a proposal we'd like to discuss with you, she said. If you want to talk to my lawyer, John said. Here's a suggestion for both of you. Go away and stay out of my life. He hung up and hit the wall with his fist. Damn her, he yelled. Amelia came over and hugged him. It's okay, John. She deserved that, and so did he. Let your lawyer deal with it. That's what you're paying him for. Just calm down, okay? She said. How can she still claim to love me after everything she's done? John wondered. I don't know, John, she replied. She clearly isn't thinking straight. You mentioned you have errands to run. Let's take care of them and get out of here for a bit, okay? All right. You're right, he said. What do we need to do today? She asked. I need to visit my civilian boss, drop off my dress blues for cleaning and have the metals mounted, then get some parts and tune up the truck, he said. Let's get started then, she said. We've got a lot to do. First, I need to call my lawyer, he said. Amelia agreed, and John made the call. He updated Mike about his call with Sandra. Yeah, I thought she was going to faint, Mike said. And Swagman looked like he was about to hit something. I'm curious to see what they propose. By the way, I spoke with Lee. He's meeting with the senior partners and the board this afternoon. And make sure your dress blues are ready. We go to court next Friday. Got it. Thanks, Mike, John said. I'm dropping them off today. I'll call if I hear anything else. They left the house, took John's uniform and medals to the cleaner, who was an old WBOQ vet and knew his stuff. Then they went to visit old man Wilkins. "Hey, boss," John said as he and Amelia entered. Wilkins looked up from his desk, buried in paperwork. "Hey there," Wilkins replied. "Damn, I need a secretary. I can't keep up with all this paperwork. I've got cars to fix." John glanced at Amelia. "Seriously? You really want to hire a secretary?" he asked. "Absolutely," Wilkins said. "Look at this mess. Plus, I have to answer phones and handle customers at the counter. I know someone who used to be a secretary and might be looking for a better job." "Interested?" John suggested. "Hell yes," Wilkins replied. John gently took Amelia's arm. "Let me introduce you to my new friend, boss. This is Amelia Simmons, and she used to be a secretary," he said. Wilkins looked at Amelia. "Think you can handle all this, young lady?" he asked. Amelia nodded confidently. "Absolutely," she said. "I can type 50 words per minute, file, take shorthand, and handle customers. I can even work the cash register out there." Wilkins thought for a moment, then asked, "Are you working right now?" "Yes, I'm a waitress, but I don't make much," she said. "Here's what I'll do," Wilkins said. "Give your current boss a 2-week notice and then come work for me. Since you're John's friend, I'll start you at $125 a week. How does that sound?" "Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Wilkins," she said with a smile. "Do you know anything about cars?" he asked. "Not as much as you, but my dad taught me quite a bit," she answered. "That's even better," Wilkins said. "Oh, John, I've got something for you." He handed John an envelope. "Consider it a welcome home bonus." John opened the envelope and found a check for $2,340. He shook Wilkins's hand in appreciation. "Thanks, boss. This really means a lot," John said. "Well, you've earned it," Wilkins replied. "Take care of that cheating wife and then come back to work, all right?" "Will do, boss," John said. Wilkins waved them off. "All right, you two, get going," Wilkins said. They shook hands with the old man and left. "Wow, $125 a week," Amelia said. "I've never made that much. Thanks again, John." "Don't mention it," John said. "That's almost double what I make as a sergeant in the Corps." "No way," Amelia said. "Yep," John said. "You really know about cars?" "Yeah," Amelia replied. "We didn't have much money, so Dad taught me how to fix things. I learned to tune up a car, change belts and tires, and even do oil changes." "Don't let Wilkins hear that. He'll have you working on cars all the time," John joked. Amelia laughed. "I don't mind getting a bit of grease on my hands. Just get what you need for the truck and I'll show you how," she said. John smiled. "Wow, I think I'm falling for you," John said. Amelia giggled and kissed him on the cheek. "Me too," she said. They stopped at John's bank where he deposited the check, putting 10% into savings as usual. He took out $100 for spending and ordered new checks without Sandra's name on them. Then they went to an auto parts store and bought everything John needed for the truck. After grabbing a hamburger, they headed home. John thought about how the place felt like a home again with Amelia around. He pulled the truck into the garage and got everything ready while Amelia went inside to change. She came back out wearing old, worn jeans and a t-shirt. "So, what should we do?" John asked. Amelia grabbed the spark plugs and wires. "I'll take care of the plugs and wires, and you handle the oil change," she said. "Sounds good," John replied. "Do you know how to set the gap on the plugs?" "Are you serious?" she asked. Without waiting for a response, she took the tools she needed and got to work. John was amazed at how skillfully she used his tools. He gathered what he needed and began changing the oil. By the time he finished, she had also replaced the spark plugs, wires, rotor, and distributor cap. He inspected her work and was very impressed. Everything looked flawless, but appearances can be misleading, so he lowered the truck and started the engine. He turned the key, and the truck roared to life just as he hoped. He revved the engine slightly and listened for any problems. Pleased with the results, he turned off the truck and looked at Amelia, who now had grease smeared across her hands and face. At that moment, she looked more beautiful to him than Sandra ever had. "So?" she asked. John took her face in his greasy hands and kissed her deeply. "I'm definitely in love," he said. "You're hired." She smiled, unconcerned about the extra grease on her face. He handed her his hand cleaner. He remembered a time he wished Sandra would enjoy moments like this with him, but she always thought his work was too messy. After they cleaned up, Amelia cooked dinner, and they enjoyed a peaceful evening watching TV. John felt more at ease than he had in a long time, and managed to get through the night without thinking about his soon-to-be ex-wife. The following days were a whirlwind. John picked up his dress blues from the cleaners and spent hours removing any loose threads, polishing his brass, shoes, and hat. Amelia gave her 2-week notice at the diner where she worked. She was informed that her employment ended immediately, and she was told to return in a few days to collect her final paycheck. During those days, John and Amelia grew closer and decided to hold off on taking their relationship further until after John's divorce was finalized. John found it challenging because it had been a long time since he'd been with a woman, but he was genuinely falling for Amelia, and it seemed she felt the same way about him. The day of the court hearing finally arrived. John showered, shaved, and dressed in his uniform after breakfast, then went into the living room where Amelia was waiting in a lovely printed dress. "Wow," she said, admiring him in his dress uniform adorned with medals. "You look fantastic," John smiled. "Thanks, but I feel like a Christmas tree," he replied. "You look amazing, too." At the courthouse, they were greeted by 14 Marines from John's unit, including Lat Col Johnson and Sergeant Major Roberts. After introductions, they entered the courtroom. The Marines filled 2 rows as John approached the table where Mike was waiting. John's parents also joined the Marines. John glanced over at Sandra and Eric at the opposite table. Sandra's eyes widened when she saw the man she had cheated on. Although he looked impressive in his uniform, she was taken aback by his missing ear and the scars on his face. Eric smirked while rubbing Sandra's pregnant belly. Sandra had yet to notice Amelia. The judge entered the room and the bailiff instructed everyone to stand. Once everyone was seated, the judge addressed the Marines. "What brings you here today, gentlemen?" he asked. Lat Col Johnson stood up. "Your Honor, my Marines and I are here to show support for Sergeant Harkness and, if needed, to speak on his character," he said. The judge acknowledged this with a nod. "Thank you, Colonel," the judge said. "I don't think we'll need that, but I appreciate the support." The Marines remained silent but cast stern looks at Sandra and Swagman throughout the hearing, which proceeded as Mike had described. The judge asked both parties a series of questions covering their marriage history and the reasons behind John's divorce request. Sandra admitted to abandoning the house, neglecting utility payments, and getting pregnant by Swagman, who then tried to convince the judge to order support for the child. The judge asked, "You really expect me to make Mr. Harkness pay child support for a child you fathered? Are you serious, or just not thinking clearly?" Denied. Throughout the hearing, the judge rejected every motion and request from Swagman. At the end, the judge ruled in John's favor, granting him everything he had asked for: the house, a permanent restraining order, and no support payments. Sandra was also ordered to return half of the money she had taken from their joint account and revert to her maiden name. She didn't need to return her rings as she had already thrown them away. Swagman protested, but the judge silenced him with his gavel. "Mr. Swagman," the judge said, using his gavel to point at him, "I am ordering an investigation into your involvement in this case. At the very least, there's a significant conflict of interest. And I know the district attorney is looking into other potential illegal activities, including conspiracy. I also understand there's a lawsuit against you for alienation of affection. Your actions and responses today will be considered in that matter." He hit the gavel on the desk. "Mr. Harkness's divorce petition is granted," the judge announced. Swagman jumped up angrily and charged at John, but was stopped by the bailiff. "You bastard!" Swagman yelled. "I'm gonna kick your ass! I'll keep messing with your ex and anyone else you get involved with. I'll ruin you." "I don't think so," John said calmly. Swagman looked at John, then at the Marines in the courtroom, who were glaring at him and Sandra with hostility. Sandra looked down, embarrassed. Lee Marcus, who had been watching from the back of the courtroom, approached Swagman after his outburst. "You're fired," Lee said. "I'm also filing a complaint with the state bar. Pack up and leave my office by the end of the day." He glanced at Sandra as Swagman stormed out, cursing. "You still have a job, Sandra, at least until after the baby is born and you've had some time to recover. We'll reassess your performance then," he said. He turned back to John and shook his hand. "Thank you for your service, Sergeant," he said. "On behalf of the partnership and the board of directors, I apologize for what you've been through." He then turned to Mike. "Given the situation and considering Mr. Harkness's service, the board accepts your initial offer. We don't see the need for more hearings. Please make an appointment with me next week to finalize everything." Mike nodded as he and Lee shook hands. "Thanks, Lee. I'll call on Monday," Mike said. Lee smiled. "Great. Maybe now I can win back some of my money on the golf course," Lee said as he left. Amelia came over to John and hugged him. John hugged her back and noticed Sandra watching him through her tears as he ended the hug. "John, I'm so sorry," Sandra said. "I didn't mean to hurt you." "Well, you did," he replied. "I just want to know one thing. Why?" Sandra shrugged. "I don't know," she said. "You were gone. Eric was around. Maybe I started thinking about money, and was tired of being broke. One thing led to another, and, well, you know the rest. What were you two talking about? He asked. Eric thought you'd be okay with raising my child while letting me be with him, she said. I didn't like it at first, but the idea started to grow on me. Again, I'm sorry. John shook his head. I see you didn't waste any time replacing me, Sandra said, glancing at Amelia. Amelia stepped in front of John, looking ready to confront Sandra. I'm not here just to replace you, she said. I'm here to heal a good man's heart, the heart you broke, and I plan to spend the rest of my life doing that. Sandra looked down before responding. I guess I deserve that, she said. John, do you think we could ever be friends again? She asked. I'm not sure, Sandra, he replied. You hurt me deeply. If it weren't for Amelia and my family, I might not even be here now. I didn't know, John. I'm really sorry, Sandra said, crying. She turned and left the courtroom. John shook Mike's hand as he got ready to leave. By now, the other Marines and John's parents had gathered around them. Thanks for everything, Mike. I really owe you, John said. Mike waved him off. Hey, that's what friends and family are for, right? Mike said. Plus, I've always wanted to see that jerk get put in his place. I'll catch up with you next week after I talk to Lee. You got a big payday coming. Now go out and celebrate. You've earned it. After shaking hands with the Marines and gathering his things, Mike left. Good job, Sergeant, Colonel Johnson said, shaking his hand. The other Marines also shook his hand and wished him well. After they left, John's parents hugged him. We're so proud of you, son, his mother said. And who is this lovely lady? She asked. John introduced Amelia proudly, and his parents hugged her warmly as if she were family. You need to bring her over for dinner sometime, John, his mother said. John smiled. I hope to do that a lot from now on, he said. Sandra's pregnancy ended in a miscarriage, and she was told she couldn't have more children. The firm kept her on under a contract prohibiting intimate relationships with staff. She worked there for 20 years and stayed single, occasionally watching John and Amelia's children. Tragically, she was passed in a car accident. John, Amelia, and his parents attended her funeral. Eric Swagman lost most of his money fighting legal battles. He lost to John in court and all appeals to the state bar. The district attorney didn't press charges due to insufficient evidence. One night, after leaving a bar, he was beaten by masked men, with severe injuries to his Johnson and a Semper Fi sign around his neck. Weeks later, he was found hanged. John proposed to Amelia the day his divorce was finalized. They married with a traditional Marine sword ceremony. They continued working for Old Man Wilkins until he passed away in 1980, leaving the shop to John. John remained in the reserves, retiring as a master gunnery sergeant in 1992, a year after Desert Storm. He occasionally dreamed about Vietnam, but managed it well. John and Amelia ran the shop until retiring in 2008, passing it to their 2 sons. 10 years later, while window shopping, John saw a drawing of the rose tattoo he had almost gotten in Vietnam. He decided to get Amelia's name tattooed over his heart. What are you doing? Amelia asked. John explained, I want your name right here, over my heart, where it belongs. You promised to heal my heart all those years ago, and you did. Now I want everyone to know how much I love you. Amelia's eyes filled with tears. You don't need to do that, she said. Oh, yes, I do, John said. I owe you everything. She sat down knowing that once John made up his mind, nothing could change it. Are you sure you want to do this, Grandpa? The artist asked. John took off his shirt. Absolutely, he said. Okay, the artist replied. Will it hurt? Amelia asked. Yeah, it's going to hurt a lot, John said. But it's worth it to me. Amelia smiled and wiped away her tears as she watched the artist tattoo her name on his skin.